Okay, and I'll start the video here also. Okay, so chapter for the topic for today, RE framework, one of the most important topic in UiPath. If you are planning to give even any certification exam for UiPath, whether it is associate or advanced exam, uh, it covers around 25 to 30% of the exam topics comes from RE framework. So one of again, I'm keep emphasizing on that. This is a very important topic. If anybody wants to get into the development, this is very important. What we are going to cover today. We'll start with a quick introduction about Columbus chapter. Then we'll cover with what is UiPath RE framework, why to use RE framework, and then we'll cover the key concepts or the prerequisite. But again, like I mentioned, it is important topic, so we need to understand couple of key concepts before we do a deep dive of the RE framework. So I'll cover that. Then we will go into the architecture of the framework, and then we will go to more details about RE framework, how it works, and then at the last, we will actually build a RE framework. I have already created a small automation, but I will go in each steps and show you how it is going to how it works. Quick note about the UiPath Ohio chapter. Again, we are offline and online community of developers, professional enthusiasts who want to share their experience of RPA industry. And then we are basically as the host or the organizer of the chapter are myself, Atul Trekha. I'm the account chief technologist and RPA architect CO lead. Recently in 2022, last few weeks back, I was also awarded as the UiPath community MVP, and I'm also a leader of Columbus chapter. And then with me, the another organizer is Dinah Gray. She is not able to join today, but she is the community marketing manager for Americas. This is our team. In the center is me, Atul, and then we have Shri, who is a very active participant and one of the leader of UiPath Columbus chapter. And then we have Rupali Dedwal. She is also one of our UiPath Columbus chapter team member. And then we are looking forward to join a couple of more team members. They will be there in a month or so. Now, like I mentioned, if you can please write your name, location, your experience, anything that you're comfortable you want to share with us, so that at least we know that who has joined the call. It will be really helpful for us to look back and see. I mean, if you are interested in getting involved in the UiPath Columbus chapter, and I also would like to get your feedback about how we can improve the community that we are trying to build in Columbus. Now, at the last, we have a YouTube channel called the UiPath Columbus chapter. So far, whatever we have covered, this is our fourth virtual meetup. We have covered the first virtual meetup. We just met and discussed. We came to know each other, our mission, how we can improve the community chapter. And then we covered the RPA 101 and the UiPath 101. So far, if you are interested, if you are the beginner, and you want to know, start from the very scratch, I think these two videos will be very helpful in understanding RPA as well as the UiPath 101. And if you can please subscribe the channel if you think our sessions are helpful. So you can always search through the UiPath Columbus chapter and subscribe our channel. And this session will get recorded and will upload in the same chapter. Now, what is RE framework? Or before I say that, what is a framework in general, right? A framework in a very layman terms or in a very general terms is a basic structure underlying a system or a concept, right? Now, if you think from that point, like if you have to build a house, let's say, right? I mean, what you do basically, you can build a house, but you are not an expert, right? I mean, so you need to start everything from the ground, and then you need to, once you're done, you may take more time, and then once the basic framework is done, you may need to then start decorating your home, right? but the main important point is your framework, right? I mean, can you do that? Yes, you can do that, but are you expert? No. And secondly, you need to start everything from the ground. So in a framework also, what you can build everything from the scratch. But what if I'll tell you that, okay, instead of you building the framework, you just focus on your decoration or where you want to keep your furniture and other things. What if I will send you an expert, or if you are given access to the experts who are good in building the underlying structure or the framework called the builders, and then let you focus more on your functionality, how you want to put the furniture, how you want to decorate it, right? So that is what in a software world also, that is what is a framework is, right? I mean, we means like the UiPath framework or the experts have built a template that you can use, so that it becomes a starting point for you to add anything useful or anything that is of add any feature on top of that, right? So RE framework is a UiPath Studio template which is built on the best practices by UiPath experts, and that becomes your starting point for any production ready, and I'm emphasizing on production ready RPA project, especially if you require a scalable processing. So that is what a RE framework is. Basically, I'm giving you a template that you just take it from when you start a project. Let's jump into that one and see how does that look. So this is what a RE framework is. So I will open a new project here and I'll show you how to start with that one. So this is when you start your UiPath Studio, and then once it's loaded, you are presented with a couple of options like, okay, whether you want to start a process, a library, a test automation, and a template, right? And then there are few one of the most common templates are also available in under this one. So we are talking about the Robotic Enterprise Framework. So this is a template that we are going to talk today. And once you click on that template, it will come something like this one. I'm showing here the performer, and if you will open the main window, so this will all be available to you out of the box. And this framework is having all the common elements that are required for automation. And we will go through each step one by one. But this is, again, like I mentioned, this is a template that is available out of the box, and has all the key elements and the best practices for our automation. It contains attributes like logging. It has a feature, logging feature. The RE framework takes care of the exception handling and how the application will be initialized and taking care of your business scenarios. Again, all you need to do is add your features on top of the out of the box template. So this is what basically RE framework is, and that is what we are going to cover today. Now, why we are going to use RE framework? I mean, that's the most important question, right? I mean, okay, we understand there's a framework. So like I mentioned, you can start building your home from the beginning. You may take more time, but again, in the framework also, you can start building everything from the scratch. Now we as I explained, this framework, this template is created by the experts, and it has been gone through rigorous steps of testing. So we know that this is something that has already been tested, and you don't need to start from scratch. So definitely, time is the most important thing, right? You're saving a lot of time in getting the best in class solution that you can start your automation from, and you don't need to worry about the basic elements. You need to more focus on your features that you want to add. So that is the most important point for using the RE framework. And definitely this the way this template is created, it is suitable for the scalable automation. Then exception handling. This RE framework has a built-in exception handling that catches all unexpected exception. Not only that, it provides us the mechanism where you can start building your business exception scenarios. For example, let's say I want to automate a process which issues a driving license, right? And for a driving license, the age is over 18 years, right? So if we are trying to do some processing which requires a age validation, within the automation step, you can add that validation, If the data that you are going to process is over 18 years, then you can throw a business exception, and the RE framework can handle that. The next feature this RE framework covers is the recovery. Okay. In any process, whenever we talk about development, right, exceptions are bound to happen. Whether that exception is a system exception or a business exception, then on those scenarios, especially in case of system exception, we want to build a system which can recover, right? So RE framework provides a mechanism where it has a built-in retry mechanism. So you can build or you can continue from the error where it occurs and go to the next steps. So we'll cover the recovery section also in a little bit more details. The third feature of RE framework is the centralized configuration. There are many attributes, or there are many variables or things, parameters that your processing depends upon, right? And it needs to be executed or automated in various environments. For example, in a development environment, I may access to a application or some Excel files or some files on a dev environment only, right? And then when I move into a test environment, those attributes can change. In production, those attributes may be different, right? I don't want to hard code all these attributes in my code. Similar way, we don't want to hard code those variables or those parameters in our automation or our in a workflow. That's where the centralized configuration comes into play, where it has a centralized configuration that I'm also going to share in a minute, which looks like something like this one. Let me go here and show you how that looks like. If you go into our performer, this is the project which I am just showing the performer. And if you will go into the data, this is the configuration file, which is an Excel file, easy to read sets. And it has all the different sheets like settings, constant, and assets. And I'll go in momentarily on this one, what are these different sheets are. But it provides a centralized place where you can configure your environment variables or other variables. For example, I was mentioning about my application path, right? I mean, it may be different from in a development environment and a test environment and production. So all I need to do, instead of going into my code, I will simply configure this Excel sheet for different environments. That is what it means by the centralized configuration. Then logging is also important, not only in terms of auditing purpose, but also for debugging purpose also, right? If some processing, if they have any exception, I want to track, okay, where that exception occurs. So the RE framework also has a inbuilt, oh, sorry, what I did. Uh, Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So RE framework also has a built-in logging that you can use for the best practices. And at the last, not the last, but again, from the most important points, RE framework is a well organized collection of all the workflows with each different states, very easy to understand and very easier to organize. That is where the most developers will kind of agree on that. It may be possible that I am working on automation and tomorrow some other developer will start working on automation, right? If we keep all the standards, the best practice in place, the other developers know that where to start. If I have to find my framework files, they are all put into a different places, and then each workflow has its own functionality. So if we have to change something on one workflow, it does not impact the overall application automation. So that is where it is well organized in simple workflows, very easy to understand. So these are a couple of most important features of RE framework, but there are many more. So as we will deep dive into the RE framework. Now, before we jump into the RE framework in more details, there are five concepts or the prerequisite that are must to have in order to understand the RE framework. The most important is the state machine. The whole RE framework is built on state machine. So we'll start with what exactly is state machine. Then the other factor is business processes. I hope some of you have experience in RPA already. So you will understand when I talk about business processes, what are they? And then we are going to cover transaction, queues, and a dispatcher and performer model. Even if you don't have any experience, if you have hearing these words for the first time, that's okay. I'm going to cover at a high level, And then whenever you get a chance, go into a little bit more details and read this topic before you jump into the RE framework. So state machines, what is a state machine, right? A state machine is a type of automation that uses a finite number of state in its execution. So for example, let's take example of your thermostat, right? um, you are, let's say, you want to set your thermostat in such a way that if a temperature reaches, let's say you have set your temperature at 68, right? And whenever there is more, let's say, hot, then you want to reduce the temperature, you want to kick in the air conditioner, right? And then you want to reduce the temperature, you automatically wants to configure till your home temperature reads 68. And when it's cold, you want to turn on the heat, right? And when it is at 68, you simply want to keep it that way, right? So now there are multiple of states here, right? First state is idle state, where you don't want to change anything. The second state is when the temperature, the room temperature or the temperature of your home started becoming little cold. Then you want to turn heat. So heat state is another state. And then when the temperature is falling under a certain, like it's going more hot, you want to reduce the temperature, you want to turn on the AC, right? That is another state, the cold state, right? And maybe you want to turn off the whole AC, whole thermostat, your whole HVAC system. So that is another state. So these are the different states. Similar in any automation, there are multiple states. For example, you want to initialize all your application. You want to start processing your application. You want to end your automation, right? So each process, if it has multiple states, state machine is the best way to implement if you have a finite number of states. And then on top of that, there are two most important activity in state machine. One is the state itself and one is the final state. The final state is moreover has only one final entry point, wherever every state activity has three points called entry, exit, and transitions. What is the transition again? Let's say, for example, when I turn off my HVAC engine, HVAC, right? Then from that state, my trigger will open that if the current temperature is the desired temperature, stay in the idle state. If it is falling on a specific point, then turn on the heat, right? So all the transitions will happen based upon a trigger point. That is what we call a transition. So this is a very important aspect. I'm only covering at a high level, but whenever you get a chance, go through that. The two important point, like I mentioned, there are two activities within a state machine: state and final state. And then within state, there is an entry point, exit, and transition. And I'm going to cover when we'll jump into RE framework. We'll take an example of how what does that state machine in terms of the RE framework. And sorry guys, I'm going trying to cover more topic in when you actually attend the RE framework academy training. It is over hundreds of hours of effort which I'm trying to cover in 1 hour window. But for any reason, if we are not able to cover, we'll do another session for it, because again, it is a very important topic. So other thing I also want to mention here is all the example or the material that I'm sharing today is taken from the UiPath Academy for a reason. The reason here is because I mentioned it is not enough in 1 hour to cover all the important point. So when you go back to those trainings, UiPath Academy trainings, you can sync or you can see what I have mentioned in this this event, right? So to make it simple, in order to pick from where I left, from in the UiPath Academy, that is where all the examples, all the materials are coming from the UiPath Academy. Okay, now let's talk about the business processes. What is a business process, right? I mean, a business process is and the way you execute your automation. There are three, again, there will be n number of scenarios, right? I mean, where your automation or your business process can be, but we have categorized high level into three different categories. One is called the linear process. What does that linear process means? The linear process means when the automation is happening in a sequence, step by step, one step after another and after another. For example, you initiate your automation, you get the data, you process the data, and you end your automation. We'll take an example here of our one of the linear process also. Then the other type of business process is called the iterative. What does this iterative means? Iterative means like you are starting with the initial step, then you get the data, but then in a loop, in an iterative way, you are processing your automation. That is what is the difference between a linear and iterative. It processes the data in iteration, but each time the different data item is processed. That is the key point here. In an iteration, but each time the data is iterative in a different, the data is different. The third type of business process is the transactional. In the transactional data, it is almost similar to the way iterative business process works, but here each what you call process is handled separately. That is the key point. All the automation design, each repeatable part is independent of each other, and that is what our uh, what you call the RE framework relies on, the transactional business process. Then I will take example of the linear process also in a minute. Then what is a transaction? Here we mentioned about a transactional business process, but what is a transaction? So a transaction represent a minimum amount, or also called a atomic amount of data, and all the necessary steps required to process the data by fulfilling a section of business process. Means a example of, like for example, I want to process some transaction, means something, let's say my record here in an iterative way, right? I mean, and I mentioned that that each process will be handled differently. So that individual data or row that I'm processing, for example, email, I want to process an email, I want to send an email for 10 customer, and each email is customized for each individuals, right? So I want to separate that individually, but here I need all the first name, last name for that customer. I require the email template for that I need to send. So each record that I am processing, each email I am processing will act as a transaction. And why we are calling it as atomic? The moment we are done processing one record, this is the record is basically of no use to us. So that is where it is atomic. Once the we are done processing that record, it becomes obsolete, or we don't need it anymore. That is what a transaction basically is. Now, next coming is the queue. That is another one of the most important topic when you are appearing for your exam. You will see a lot of question coming around the queue, especially what is the queue priority and different states of queues. So again, this is one of the most important topic. But in a very high level, a queue is just a container that enables you to hold unlimited number of items. So the item can be your invoice information, it can be your email information. Out of the box, the queues are free form data, but then you can also configure your queues in a specific schema in JSON format. Queue enable you to create large automation project underlined with a complex logic, and we will take example of a queue here, how to create a queues also in our framework. Now, let's talk about what are the business scenario where we need transactional processing or RE framework. Let's take first example where you need to read a data from several invoices that are in your sitting in a folder. Okay, you are inputting your data into another system. This means you read invoices one by one, and you need to save all your information coming from this invoice into some system, let's say SAP system, right? And that is where you need to continuously repeat these steps, read all the information from invoice, and then input that information into a SAP system is one example of the business process that can be handled by our RE framework or as a contender for our transactional processing. Similar way, let's say if I have given you a list of thousands of customer where we need to read the address, email address from a sheet, and then we need to send personalized messages to those users, right? So you will go through each record one by one from the Excel sheet, and then you may draft an email with their first name, last name, or maybe some specific information like a coupon, and then send that email. So this is all can be handled by the RE framework in a transactional way. Now, the last topic, the key concept of RE framework is a dispatcher and a performer model. What does that mean? It is also called as a performer or a consumer model. It is a standard term. What does that mean is that the process that is responsible for creating the queues, like I mentioned, queues are the one that will hold your data. Now, let's take example of one of the business process scenario. Now you need to read your invoices, okay? And the first step is read all invoices, and the second step is to process those invoices, whether extracting the data from invoices, and then one by one go through each invoice data and update in SAP system, right? So for each of the data that we are extracting from the invoices, we will put in a queue, right? So that process can be independent, right? And that is where when we say that a dispatcher, it means you are collecting the data from your data source, and you are simply putting that data or storing that data in queues. It can be one queue, it can be multiple queues, right? I mean, let's say in that invoice I have, or in a document that I'm extracting, there are information related to appointments, there are information related to fees, right? So I want to store all the fee related information in one queue. For example, my finance queue, and I want to store all the appointments in other queues. So I can create multiple queues here where the related data will go into each queue. So that will become our dispatcher. The dispatcher process is only responsible for extracting your information from multiple systems and putting into different queues. Now, what is a consumer or a performer? Now, what performer will do is performer will read your data one by one from the queues, and it will start whether sending those emails or whether it will start storing that information in a SAP information system, right? So now what I did is I have separated two different logics into two different processes or models, one called dispatcher, one called performer. And yes, we are going to cover one of the example in our today's session. This is now with all the questions, all the main topics around the RE framework. I'll take a pause. Anyone has any questions so far into the key concept that we have covered before I jump into the deep dive of RE framework? I'll take a pause and open for any questions. Okay, so I'll treat it as no, but if you have any questions, again, feel free, you know my email, feel free to send me an email, or you can also use Slack channel or our different platform to ask any questions if you have. So let's go to the RE framework architecture. This is how a RE framework looks like. And if you remember, we talked about the state machines, right? These are the different states of RE framework. When your automation starts, this becomes your entry point. So when you start your automation, the very first state that occur is the initialization state. Means it is responsible for initializing all your configuration. Not only that, it is responsible for initializing all your applications. For example, if I want to enter all the data in a SAP application, this is the state where you will open your SAP application or any other application. It can be, let's say, a website. So here in the initial state where all your configuration will be read from the configuration file or even from other places, and then the application will be also initialized. That is where the first state will come. And the next state that will come is your get transaction data. If your configuration is read successfully and all the applications are initialized successfully, it will go to the get transaction data state. If for any reason, let's say I'm not able to read my configuration or I'm not able to initialize my application, there is no point in going further, right? That is where if in this state this exception happen, your process will stop. It will simply call another state called the end process, and your automation will end here, because you need to fix your initialization before you can start automating, right? So that is where this is very important. If your initialization starts and if any exception occurs, the process will end it here. If it is the process is able to successfully initialize, it will go to the get transaction data, and that is where all the data, like for example, we take example of our reading a queue which has the invoice information, right? Or your email information. So get transaction will pick the next data or the record or the transaction that you want to process. So in this state, it will read the data from your queues and it will go to the next state called the process transaction. In the process transaction where the actual magic will happen, in the process transaction where we will process your transaction, whether it is about sending an email or entering your data into a SAP system, right? It can vary again upon your process, but this is where the process transaction will happen. And this transaction state will also take care of your success or business exception. For example, if you're successfully able to process your transaction, means you are able to enter your data in SAP system, then it will go and fetch the next transaction needs to be processed or the next record that needs to be processed. But for any reason, if there's a business exception, for example, if you are trying to enter a data for a driving license and you have a criteria that it should not be over 18 years, if there's any record which is not which is less than 18 years, this system will, I mean, you need to configure, but it will show a business exception and then it will go and read the next record because you don't want to retry it. I mean, those business uh, exceptions are pretty much straight. Even if you will try to process that record again, you will not achieve anything because the business requires you to be more over 18. So that is where this process will start into the getting the next record. But if there's a system exception, if anything which is not expected occurred, right? For example, let's say I'm not able to read data from let's say my application or something unexpected happen, then this RE framework has an inbuilt mechanism of retry. What it will do is it will go back again and initialize everything from the scratch. Means it will now re-initialize all your application and then again move get the similar data again because the whatever the record that get failed, it will get into the transaction record and then it will try to process that record again. You can configure how many times you want to retry. These are if you are using your not using your RE framework, that value is available in your configuration. But if you are using queues, then you can configure while creating queues, which I'll show you how you can configure how many times you want to retry this. So this is our RE framework architecture, and these are the details what I've just covered. Four important state: initialization, get transaction data, process transaction, and the end process where finally all your application will get closed and you will be in a clean state. So these are the most important state of RE framework. Now, configuration, right? I talked about the configuration. This is how the configuration look like. This is in again in simple Excel format, and there are three sections here. One is settings, constant, and assets, right? So let's see what exactly each section is. Firstly is the settings, right? Configuration values to be used throughout your project means like anything that are required to be used in your project on a specific environment, right? Here examples are your queues, right? I mean, I have a queue here that I'm creating. Let's say I have a different queue for my test environment. I can configure here. I can create a entry here in my settings sections, which will define my queue name. So anything that is required throughout the project, but can vary from environment to environment goes into your settings section. Anything that is consistent throughout your project and does not change from environment to environment. For example, your maximum retry number or your exception where exception screenshot will be taken. It does not change from environment to environment, right? That is where all those entries go into your constant section. And then we have an other area called assets where all the assets from the orchestrator goes here. So these are the three sections in a configuration that I've mentioned goes here. Settings, constants, and assets. So very important to understand which goes where. There will definitely couple of questions that comes here. And one tricky part here is, like I mentioned, assets, right? I've told that anything from the orchestrator goes into the asset. But the key here is accept your credentials. The credential of a orchestrator still goes into settings section, and that is one question that I have seen in many of the practice session. So make sure that, I mean, you cover that part, go through a little bit more details in this configuration part, because there's a very another important topic for RE framework for your if your certification exams. Now, we have already covered exception handling and recovery at a high level. There are two types of exception that the RE framework handles. One is the business exception, one is the system exception. Anything that is your rule driven, right? For example of your 18 years and above, those are called business exception, and you are responsible for throwing that business exception. You need to construct your business exception and throw that exception, and then the RE framework will take care of that. And one, it determines that there's a business exception, it will not try to retry. Basically, it will go to the next record. And in case of system exception, anything that is not accepted, if you are accepting that, if that occur, the RE framework will take care of that. And the way you have configured your retry mechanism, it is going to it is going to take care of that, and the RE framework itself will retry those in your process automation. Now, the next topic is our logging. Logging is also being handled by the RE framework. What does that mean? Is basically all your details. For example, every time you initiate a process, let's say get transaction or process transaction, you want to save that field. Like, okay, whenever each jump from workflow to other, you want to log it, right? So to better understand if your any error occurred, at which step that error occurred, right? Not only that, what if you want to store some additional information like your transaction number, right? So you can add additional fields in RE in your RE framework. All those are already there, but you can add a little bit more information. I will walk through that. For example, you want to store transaction field 1, transaction field 2, that are more important to you. RE frameworks logging capability also comes out of the box here. The important note here is never store any sensitive information in logs, for example, SSN or PII. You are not supposed to store that because log files are not encrypted. So there's always a chance that there's some audit or some privacy issue can be leaked. So never store any sensitive information in your log files. But RE framework again will take care of all your logging. Coming into the more next part is variables. There are a couple of key variables that are important in RE framework. For example, the transaction item. This is the queue item or your transaction that is being processed. Then we have the system exception, which I explained. Your business exception. Transaction number is again is just a sequential counter which transaction is coming. And key variable here is the configuration. This is of type dictionary, and this is the variable that you will see will get passed along all the different workflows in a framework. Means you need to pass this configuration variable from one workflow to other, because this holds all the important information like your queue name, right, or your application path, right? So this information will be used throughout all the different workflow. So very important to understand, this is one of the important variables in your RE framework. Then like retry mechanism, depending upon whether you are using your queues or even configuring by your own, this is another variable that is important. Then like I mentioned, field 1 and field 2 are optionally, you can add customize based upon your need. Then third is the transaction ID, which is a unique identifier for your transaction. And then this is a data table which can be used to store all your transaction or the data retrieved. And the last is consecutive system exception. For example, if one exception is occurring multiple time, when you want to take a call to stop your job, right? You don't want to continue in an endless loop. for your consecutive exceptions. That is where this variable will be important. Just a high level again, not specific to one, but it these are variables that are important to understand. Then next come is the different workflows within RE framework. It various workflows come out of the box. I'm telling which state has what workflow. In the initialization state, there are three workflows that will get invoked. One is the initial all setting. This workflow is responsible for reading all the configurations from the Excel file. The next workflow is the kill all process. What this will do is, if let's say any exception occur, you are working on SAP application, right? And let's say the process ended in between, right? Whenever you want to start the process again, you want to close the SAP application, you because you don't know where the error occurred, right? So this kill all process is responsible for forcefully closing your application, because at this stage you are not sure what is the current state of that application. That is where the kill all process will forcefully kill your application. That is another important point to remember, that what is the difference between a kill all process and close all application. I'll go in a minute in between for that important point. But these are the two workflow, and the third workflow is initialize all application. This is the workflow responsible for initializing or opening your application, the SAP application in this case, or it can be email, or it can varies upon this one. But this is the process responsible for initializing your application. The second state is get transaction. It invokes only one workflow, which is the get transaction data. In this workflow, the workflow will try to retrieve the data from the orchestrator if any item is there to be processed. So this workflow will simply retrieve the data that needs to be processed. And then comes the process transaction state. In this state, multiple two workflows will get invoked. One is the process workflow, where the actual processing will take care. And then the set transaction status workflow, which is one of the most important, another important one, responsible for all your retry, taking screenshot of your exception, closing all your application, and killing all your processes. What is the difference between that? The close all application will decently try to close your application. For example, in a web browser, it can try to close the browser or click on the cross button depending upon how you have configured it. But in a simple way, like there may be a situation where in your application there's a close button, right? So, or maybe a logout button. So the close application will decently try to close your application, where a kill process will forcefully close your application. This is another important point to remember, that what is the difference between close and kill. And at the end, again, this will try to firstly close your application for any reason. If it does not, RE framework will try to forcefully close your application. So very important point here, these are the four different states we have covered, and within each state, what are the different workflows that will get invoked. Now let's talk about how to use RE framework. In this one, let's take an example about our simple like flow, where we have to what you call, let's say, send your enter some data in application. We'll take an example of our UI demo application. So let's go into that one. Okay. So what I want to do here is, I have this application, REFramework application, and I'll show you what this application look like. I will, this is the application I want to take an example of. The first, the bot will enter the user name and the password of this application. On a successful authentication, it will click on login button and your application will launch. And then I have an Excel sheet here. So what the process I'm trying to demonstrate here is a very simple one. There are multiple records here. There are around 50 records that are sitting in a in Excel sheet with the columns like cash in, on US check, and not on US check. Okay, with respective values. The process that I'm trying to automate is, the bot should read each record one by one and enter that record into this application, UiPath demo application, where it will log into the application, enter in cache in, US check and not US check. And then there will be some validation that we will do. If threshold is more than 1,000, then it should throw some business exception. So this is the automation that I will demonstrate. But to understand how it works in RE framework is, again, first thing is to initialize our application, read everything from the configuration file, uh, initialize our application, get the data from the queues, and then process the data. In our case, it will be entering that data in this UI demo application which I have shown. And this process will continue for each record and that I've shown in that Excel sheet. And at the end, it will end the automation. So this is the example we will see today. And like I mentioned, there are two ways. I mean, like in RE framework, there are two ways to handle your RE framework. One is with queues and one is with the tabular data. Out of the box, the RE framework is built for the consumer model, means where it is going to processor, means it will process your data. It is not built for the performer where you are supposed to get your data and save in queues. So RE framework in out of the box is a consumer based model, but you can again, if you don't want to use queues, you can change little bit, tweak your RE framework and make usable for you can process it with the tabular data. So in today's example, we will go with the queues. Let's go here. There's an actually another point, but let's hide. I'll not go in more details, but in terms of queues, when we'll start processing, uh, go through this queue state, because very important how our queue status work, when the data get break, in which state it goes, and how whenever an occur, which state it goes. So this is another very important topic. I don't have time to go into this particular. It is a little bit off from the RE framework, but very important in order to understand how the whole automation works. I'll not go into more details, maybe cover in some other topics, because I want to jump into our example here. We have only 10 minutes left. So let's start with our performer and the dispatcher model, right? So what I have done here, this is our, if you remember, I talk about the performer and the dispatcher and the performer model, right? And we talked about what happened to my dispatcher here. Uh, did I did anything wrong here? Why I'm not able to see anything? Okay, let me see if I have. So this is the linear process. What this basically what was supposed to do was, let me see if I can recover that. I remember I said that. If not, we'll try to see if we can quickly create that one. Not that one. I will try to quickly recover that if I can. But okay, not this one. Okay, so basically, I think I need to skip that part. For some reason, my workflow for the dispatcher doesn't didn't saved. But in the dispatcher, what it was doing basically was, let me go through the activity. So what I was doing was I was using the Excel application scope, or you can even use, instead of going through that part, simply read range. Let me see if I can do that. Read range here, and in the read range. What I'm doing wrong here? Let me do this one. Read range here, and here I will specify my sheet here. Where is the sheet? And I will point it to my transaction framework here. This is a sheet we want to read. And if you know about the Excel automation, it will try to read all the data. All I don't want is that I don't want to save. Basically, when you blank it, it will read all the sheets. This is where the sheet will get read. And the next step I want to do is for each row, in data table. Once that is done, I want to store that in a table. Let's call it control K DT transactions. So here, what it will do is it will read all the record from the Excel sheet, store in a data table. So what I want to do here is now for each row in the DT transactions, this is what we are creating the dispatcher where I want to read each record one by one and store into our queues. So what I want to do next is I want to do add queue item here. Okay. And now the most important here part is your uh, queue name, which is we are going to create our name, which is specified here. If I will go into my UiPath orchestrator, here it was the one where we will create queues. I hope everybody is aware of that. If not, we will cover that one also. This is the queue where I want to store all my data. Okay, and the name of the queue is UI demo. One important point is if you are going through the academy session, you may face challenges in implementing RE framework because if you are using if you have a different folder, if you are not using the default folder, for example, my case, I have created a folder called UiPath Columbus chapter, right? So make sure whenever, if you are even downloading the projects from the academy session, make sure that you are defining in your RE framework. There is a attribute called the folder orchestrator folder name. So you need to specify that name, otherwise it will not be able to read the data. So here I'm specifying the queue name here. I think then we need to construct the collection here. So what it will do is it will, once I will process this, dispatcher will simply I will create each element, for example, cache, check-in, and all this one. And once I will run this process, what it will, this dispatcher will do is it will read all my transaction data and add queues for each of them. For the save of time, I'm going to do is a quick way is I'm going to upload items here manually for now. Okay, I am going here and in my data folder, in my RE framework folder, I have this file. So I'm going to manually upload this file for now. Okay, so what is happening here? Let me convert that into, I think we all have only 5 minutes left. Let's skip this part. Maybe I'll demonstrate in the next subsequent session. But understand from here point is when the dispatcher is done, you will see all your transactions here. Okay, one by one, it will upload all your transactions in your queues, and that will be used for your processing. I'll give it another last try if I can do that, but if not, then we'll simply skip it for now. Uh, we'll close this one and let's try again. Okay, one more time. Upload items here and we'll browse it. CSV file, open. Okay, yeah, here is all. And then we'll simply 15 errors occur that. Okay, what happened? First mismatch, too many fields. Okay, so I'll not go into this much for now. We have only 3 minutes left, so let's skip this part. But the understand most important point to understand is you need to, once the dispatcher is done, you will have all your data. This dispatcher will be responsible for adding your records into queue, and very simple for a read all the range, add queue items, and in the queue items you will define your collection one by one, all the different fields that you want to add. For example, let's say the first field was cash in, right? And how I will do is I will simply do that current row, and you can define the name of your field here. For example, in my case, it was no, what I did. It happens sometimes, and I don't know. It is a curse to so technical. Whenever you try to show a technical demo, sometimes you always have those kind of issues. But let's see here. I'm trying to run this demo so that it makes more sense. Let me see if I can able to do that or not. But I really want to show you that demo so that we can at least see how it works. Okay. This is the cache in. I'm taking basically all this example here. current row, I'm basically adding all the different attributes that I want to capture in my queues. And these are the three attributes that I want to capture in my queues. One, two, and three. Okay. So these are the three. I will delete this one and I'll call it this one again, current row. And then what I'm going to do is, and then this one also as, yep. So basically these are the rows that I want to add. Let's take a look if we can add that one. And I think in the folder path, if you will see, this is the one I was talking about. I need to mention UiPath Columbus. Yeah. Let's give it a try if we can do that. And here my collection is all done. Everything is done. So let's try it here, whether it is able to execute everything or not. Undo that and let's run. So the process will trigger in, and if everything goes and the folder does not exist, UiPath, oh, I mentioned this, so UiPath Columbus chapter. This is the folder structure which I have just shown you, that the name of the folder structure in my queue, which is the UiPath Columbus chapter. If everything goes fine, it should upload all my records from the Excel sheet into this items in this queue. Guys, are you fine if going 2 minutes over on that? If everyone is comfortable, I really want to show you that how it works. So everyone fine going over a little couple of minutes?
Fine with me, Atul.
Okay. Or I'll see if it works or not. I mean, ideally it should have uploaded all the files, but let me see whether the work it through or not. So let's do this one. Let's not hurry into this one because I think this is an important topic. So I'll take a pause here because we need to understand, go a little bit more details in our performer also. Even if I try to run this one, what I want to go through is how we have configured the different elements here. So it will not get a proper justification if we will not, we'll try to hurry on this topic. So what I'll do is, for the practical demo, we will try to do in the next section. We will continue this RE framework. Meanwhile, that will also give you an opportunity to whatever we have covered in our this meeting today. Go through each of those topics, and in the next session, we will pick from here where we have left. Basically, we will take this example of dispatcher and performer, and we will go one by one and take example how this will work. But again, for some reason, I don't know, I saved it, it doesn't get saved. All my activities in this one has gone. But then the next process we will cover, start from where we are leaving for now. But at least this session should give you a theoretical overview what is RE framework is. Whatever we are not able to cover is the practical part of it, using the performer and dispatcher model, and that we will continue in our next section. Apologize guys again for the error, whatever happened. For some reason, I don't know why it doesn't get saved, but will pick it in the next session. Thank you so much once again, everyone, for joining, and we'll start. Will I will send another invitation maybe next week or a following week to start it from here, where we will start covering the practical aspect of RE framework, going through each topic one by one, where all the framework files are sitting here and what we have covered in our UI demo, which will show you how it will the processor will read and start processing those files and how the RE framework will work. Thank you so much once again, everyone, for joining our event today. And apologize for the little bit of the technical issue, or I don't know what happened, and it didn't save the my process, the dispatcher part. And performer is dependent upon reading all those files. So we'll start from there. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much once again for joining. And I'm signing out for today. Have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Atul. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Atul.
Thank you.